Mesopotamia. It was the Epic of Gilgamesh. In the Bible, the story of Noah's Ark. In India, the tale of Manu, saved from the Great Deluge. Among the Greeks, the flood of Deucalion. Across the Americas, countless tribes remembered a world washed away. Different voices, different lands, yet the same story. They speak of raging storms and endless seas, of chosen survivors carrying the seed of life inside vessels of wood, stone, or something far stranger. Always there is destruction. Always there is renewal. A cycle of death and rebirth, written not just in myth, but perhaps in memory. Why does this story echo everywhere? Is it no more than allegory, a symbol of mankind's fear of chaos? Or does it conceal something far older, a shared recollection of a real catastrophe, so vast it scarred the human soul? Perhaps these floods were not of Earth at all, but of another world entirely. More than 2,000 years ago, in the heart of ancient Greece, a philosopher set pen to parchment. His name was Plato, seeker of truth, master of allegory. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he recorded a story unlike any other. A story of a world that was, and then was lost. Atlantis. A vast power beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a land of shining cities, of temples plated in gold, of harbors filled with ships that ruled the seas. Its people were strong, brilliant, ambitious. They reached across the world until their pride became their ruin. The gods, Plato wrote, unleashed their wrath. And in a single day and a single night, the island of Atlantis was swallowed by the sea. The waves rose, the earth shook, and the empire was gone. Lost beneath the waters, remembered only in whispers and tales. For centuries, scholars and dreamers have debated his words. Was Atlantis nothing more than allegory? a moral fable meant to warn of arrogance and decay. Or was Plato echoing something far older? A fragment of memory handed down across the ages, a remembrance not of Earth, but of a world that drowned long before our own. High above us, a red world drifts in silence. Today it is barren, lifeless, a desert of dust and stone. Yet once, long ago, it was not so. Mars was a world of water. From the eyes of our satellites, from the wheels of our rovers, the evidence is undeniable. Ancient riverbeds carve the surface. Delta plains stretch like ghostly scars. Canyons deeper than Earth's oceans, once filled with rushing tides. Ice buried beneath the soil. Minerals that could only have formed in the presence of liquid water. Scientists tell us that billions of years ago, Mars was blue. Rain fell. Oceans stretched across its face. Seas shimmered beneath a younger sun. For a time, Mars lived. But something changed. The air thinned. The warmth fled. Storms raged, and waters drained into the dust. A world of seas became a wasteland of stone. Mars drowned not in water, but in silence. If Plato's tale was not of Earth at all, but of another world, could Atlantis have been here? A civilization born beneath alien skies, nurtured by rivers now gone. Could the lost empire of Atlantis have thrived on Mars before the Great Flood consumed it forever? Across every continent, in every age, humanity remembers the waters. In Mesopotamia, scribes etched into clay the tale of a flood that ended an age. In India, sages told of Manu, saved upon a vast boat guided by a sacred fish. In Greece, the myth of Deucalion and Pyrrha spoke of a flood that spared only a handful of souls. And among the peoples of the Americas, legends recall great deluges that reshaped the earth and swept away entire nations. These stories are scattered across the world, carried by cultures that never met, divided by oceans and centuries. Yet always the same pattern emerges. The storm, the rising sea, the survivors, chosen or blessed, who preserve the spark of life and begin again. Could it be coincidence? Separate peoples, imagining the same disaster in isolation. Or are these myths fragments of a single, older memory, retold in many tongues, reshaped across the ages? Perhaps what we call myth is not invention at all. Perhaps it is remembrance. The echoes of a catastrophe so immense that it imprinted itself upon the human spirit. A catastrophe not born on Earth, but on a world that drowned long before ours. Plato spoke of Atlantis, he described not a single city, but an empire. A power vast and radiant, reaching beyond its shores, shaping the world in its image. But what if this vision was not of Earth at all, but of Mars? Imagine a world of oceans and coasts beneath an alien sky, shining harbors lined with ships, temples of stone and metal rising above the waves. Cities that glimmered with firelight as the red sun set over endless seas. A civilization not unlike our own, yet older, stranger, perhaps wiser. every myth hints at a greatness lost, knowledge beyond our grasp, an age when gods walked with mortals, when man touched the divine. Perhaps these were not gods at all, but the remnants of a people whose home was a dying world. Atlantis was not only a place, it was an idea. A symbol of power, of hubris, of downfall. And if Mars was once Atlantis, then the Lost Empire was not an island, but an entire world. A world that fell into silence, leaving behind only fragments of memory and the faint echo of a civilization greater than we dare to imagine. For a time, Mars thrived. Its rivers carved valleys, its oceans shimmered beneath the sun, its skies carried storms of rain and cloud. But no world lasts forever. The balance began to falter. The atmosphere thinned. The warmth bled away into the void. Storms grew fierce, tearing across the planet's face. Waters once held in oceans burst forth, drowning the lowlands in sudden fury. Volcanoes raged, meteors struck. The heavens themselves turned against the world. In a single age, Mars was transformed, from blue to red, from life to silence. Civilizations, if they existed, would have faced not years, but days of terror. Cities swallowed, harbors lost to waves that rose higher than mountains. proud empire of Atlantis, if it truly was here, perished beneath skies that darkened forever. When Mars lost its breath, its seas died with it. The waters froze. The rivers turned to dust. What remained was a silent graveyard. A world entombed in sand and stone. Atlantis drowned, and with it, Mars itself died. Not all were lost. In the shadow of catastrophe, legends tell of survivors who prepared for the end. They built vessels, arks, not of wood alone, but of knowledge, of memory, of stone and starfire. And when their world began to fall, they did not sail across oceans. They sailed across the void. Imagine the sight. The skies of Mars split with storm and flame. Gigantic vessels rising through the thinning air, climbing past the clouds, past the dying sun. The seas roared beneath them, the ground shook, and still they ascended. Leaving behind a world that had become a tomb. Through the black gulf of space they traveled. Days turned to years, generations perhaps. Carried between worlds in the last refuge of a dying civilization. Their destination, a young and restless Earth. A world of fire and storm, its seas newborn, its lands still shaping beneath clouds of ash. Harsh, untamed, yet alive. The arks descended, and with them came the seeds of survival. stories, symbols, fragments of knowledge, perhaps even the spark of life itself. For those who fled Mars did not merely cross an ocean, they crossed the greatest sea of all, the gulf between worlds. On Earth, life had already begun its long ascent. From single cells to crawling creatures, from apes to the first of humankind, evolution carved its patient path. Our bones, our blood, our faces, shaped by this world. And yet, in every cave painting, in every legend, there is a sense of something more. A sudden spark, a leap beyond survival into imagination, fire, and story. Where did that spark come from? Perhaps when the arcs of Mars descended, they did not bring new bodies, but new minds. Ideas, knowledge, fragments of a memory of another world. Strangers from a drowned planet, walking among the early humans, guiding, teaching. Leaving behind whispers of what was lost. Some speak of gods who descended from the sky. Others of teachers, wanderers, figures who shaped the dawn of culture. What if these were not divine beings at all, but survivors, carrying the last light of Atlantis, the last memory of Mars? Evolution shaped our flesh, but myth, perhaps born of Mars, shaped our soul. And in the meeting of the two, humanity as we know it began. Across the cosmos, fragments of worlds collide. Meteors tear through skies, carrying with them dust, stone, and something far more precious, the building blocks of life itself. Scientists call it panspermia, the possibility that life is not bound to a single world, but seeded across the stars. DNA may not have been born here, but delivered. Carried within crystals of ice, locked inside ancient rock, surviving the fire of re-entry. On Earth, we have found meteorites that once came from Mars. Inside them, traces of organic compounds, whispers of chemistry that hint at life. Proof that the worlds touch each other, not only with stone and flame, but with the possibility of Genesis. If Atlantis truly lived on Mars, then its legacy may not only be cultural, but biological. The spark of life, carried from a dying world, igniting anew upon Earth. A hidden inheritance, written into our very cells, encoded within our genes. Not gods, not myths, but survivors etched into our DNA. Perhaps we are, in part, the children of Mars, not only through stories and symbols, but through blood, through breath, through the invisible script of life that binds us to the stars. Through centuries, stories shift. Each time they are told, they change. Shaped by the tongues that speak them, the cultures that preserve them. What begins as memory becomes myth. What begins as truth becomes allegory. Plato's Atlantis may have been just such a tale. Not a lie, not invention, but a reflection, dimmed and distorted, of something far older than Greece. A memory passed down through ages, transformed, until it became the story of a single island swallowed by the sea. But what if that island was never in the Atlantic at all? What if it was an echo of a drowned world beyond the stars? A memory of Mars, of a civilization that fell when oceans consumed the land, when the skies tore open and the gods abandoned them. In Plato's words, we glimpse not only his philosophy, but perhaps fragments of a cosmic inheritance. The lost empire of Atlantis was not a city beneath the waves of Earth. It was a world that died in fire and flood, a world we have never ceased to remember. Across the world, the stories differ in name and language, in detail, yet at their heart they are the same. In Mesopotamia, a man warned by the gods builds a vessel to survive the endless waters. In the Hebrew scriptures, Noah carries the seed of life within an ark. In India, Manu is guided to safety by a sacred being to repopulate the world after the deluge. And in Greece, Deucalion and Pyrrha throw stones across a drowned land to raise humankind anew. Are these merely coincidences, tales born of local floods retold as legend? Or are they fragments of a single, older memory, scattered like shards of glass across the world's cultures? Perhaps the Ark was never only a boat. Perhaps it was a vessel of another kind, a craft that carried survivors, not just across waters, but between worlds. Mars, the catastrophe was real. Oceans surged, storms raged, and the people fled. Their journey was remembered, but as the centuries passed, the story blurred. It was told again and again, until the skies of Mars became the skies of Earth. Until the memory of a cosmic exodus became the parable of a flood. The mythologies of Earth are not separate. They are fragments of the same primal tale. The remembrance of a world that drowned, and the survivors who began again here. Across the earth, monuments rise from stone. Pyramids pierce the desert sky. Megaliths stand in silent circles. Temples, carved from mountain rock, aligned with the stars. From Egypt to Mesoamerica, from Stonehenge to the Andes, the same shapes, the same patterns return. Why did civilizations, separated by oceans and centuries, build in the same forms? Why pyramids? Why circles of stone aligned with the heavens? Perhaps they were not inventions of the Earth at all. Perhaps they were memories, the last reflections of a greater architecture, recalled imperfectly by those who fled a dying world. Imagine the coasts of Mars, lined with vast structures, pyramids rising above alien seas, colossal monuments etched into the red stone. When the survivors came to Earth, they carried no blueprints, no machines, only memory. And so they built again, from what they remembered, what they revered, what they longed to preserve. Every pyramid may be a shadow of a greater original. Every stone circle, a fragment of a cosmic design, not built to honor gods, but to echo a lost world, to remind humanity of where it came from and of what was lost in the flood of Mars. Myths never die. They change, they adapt, they find new voices. What Plato once wrote in faded script, the modern world retells on the page and on the screen. In the pulp magazines of the last century, Atlantis rose again, an empire beneath the waves, a city of wonder and tragedy. Science fiction dreamed of Mars as a dying world, with canals, lost kingdoms, and civilizations vanishing into dust. From H.G. Wells to Edgar Rice Burroughs, from the silver screen to comic books, Atlantis and Mars became the twin mirrors of humanity's imagination. And still, the myth evolves. Hollywood reimagines Atlantis as a kingdom beneath the sea. NASA's rovers send back images of a silent red desert, Yet each photograph stirs the same ancient hunger. Was there once more? Was there life? Was there memory? Centuries, from Plato's dialogues to digital screens, the story endures. Atlantis, Mars, two names, two myths, yet bound by the same longing. A vision of greatness lost, of civilizations drowned, of a past just out of reach, forever returning in new disguises. Science does not speak in myths. It speaks in data, in fragments, in evidence scattered like bones across the desert of time. And yet, those fragments whisper a story as old as legend itself. From orbit, satellites map the scars of rivers across the Martian surface. Canyons deeper than Earth's oceans, deltas where water once pooled, minerals that could only have formed beneath ancient seas. Proof that Mars was once alive with water, perhaps even with life. In laboratories on Earth, scientists probe the mysteries of DNA. An ancient code, older than humanity itself. Mutations written like hieroglyphs inside every cell. Traces of survival, adaptation, inheritance. Clues that life may not be bound to one planet alone, but may travel. Seeded by stone, by ice, by fire. Science cannot prove Atlantis. It cannot prove a Martian empire drowned in a cosmic flood. but it shows us a world that was habitable. It shows us rocks from Mars that have fallen to Earth, carrying organic compounds. It shows us that life can move between worlds. And so, even in the language of science, the myth is not silenced. Instead, it finds new form. The possibility that our oldest stories may be echoes of truths the universe itself has written. Not all are convinced. For centuries, scholars and scientists have dismissed Atlantis as fiction. A fable told by Plato, nothing more. Books have been written to debunk it, charts drawn to disprove it, arguments sharpened to bury it beneath reason. And yet, the story refuses to die. Even in the face of doubt, it endures. Reborn in every age, retold in every generation. Why? Because mystery itself is immortal. Atlantis on Mars may be only a theory, a vision painted between science and imagination, between myth and memory. But its power does not lie in proof. It lies in the question of who we are, of where we come from, of what we have forgotten. As long as humanity seeks its origin, the myth will live. Because Atlantis, whether an island, a world, or a dream, is not only about the past, it is about us. And the mystery of our beginning is a story that will never be silenced. They are echoes, carried through time, buried in our collective soul. They shape the way we see the heavens, the earth, and ourselves. Atlantis, the great flood, the gods descending from the sky. These may not be inventions of imagination, but memories preserved in ritual and faith, fragments of a history too vast to hold, too ancient to fully remember. We are the children of two worlds, formed by the soil of Earth, yet haunted by the ghost of Mars. Every temple, every rite, every tale of beginnings may be the unconscious retelling of that first catastrophe. When oceans swallowed a world, and survivors crossed the void. Across centuries, cultures have dressed this memory in new names, new faces, new gods. But beneath the surface, the rhythm is the same. A fall, a flood, a rebirth. The cycle of a civilization remembered not in stone, but in spirit. Perhaps that is why the story will not fade, because deep within us, carried in blood and breath, we remember. We remember the red horizon that became a blue one. We remember the world we lost and the one we gained. heavens and wondered. Now, at last, we rise to meet them. Rockets pierce the sky, carrying with them not only machines, but the dream of return. Mars, once the cradle of oceans, once perhaps the home of Atlantis, waits in silence. Our rovers crawl its deserts. Our satellites scan its surface. Our telescopes trace every scar and shadow. Each image brings us closer, and yet deepens the mystery. Soon, it will no longer be machines alone. Human footsteps will press into Martian soil. Explorers will walk where rivers once flowed, where cities may have stood, where legends say an empire drowned. Imagine it, an astronaut brushing dust from a stone, uncovering a pattern too precise to be chance. A fragment of a wall, a carving, a ruin. Silent proof that we are not the first to call this world home. Strangers. We go as children, returning to an ancestral land, to the planet where the flood began, and perhaps to Atlantis itself, waiting still beneath the sands of Mars. Mars, the Great Flood. 3 stories, told in different tongues, yet bound together by a single rhythm. A rise, a fall, a world lost to the waters. Perhaps they are only myths, legends born of fear and wonder, echoes of storms and seas that once scarred the earth. But perhaps they are more. Perhaps they are memories, fragments of truth, carried across ages like whispers in the dark. And dream of a sunken city. We look to the stars and wonder about a drowned world. In every temple, in every tale, in every question of where we come from, Atlantis still speaks. Maybe it was never an island. Maybe it was never of this earth. Maybe it was Mars, the red world that became a grave, the birthplace of our oldest story. And so the myth endures, not as history, not as proof, but as a reminder of our longing,